The Pelicans made a risky move to trade up for Derik Queen. I'll tell you why he's actually a win-now player, but also maybe Zion Williamson's eventual replacement. It's the Tuesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Tuesday. We looked at Jeremiah Fears yesterday. We are going to look at Derik Queen today. How are they going to use him in Summer League? Does he fit alongside Zion Williamson? Is he the replacement eventually for Zion Williamson? That's a bigger theme of this summer that I want to dive into in today's show as well. Life beyond Zion Williamson. Then we're going to touch on some Summer League things. We got the official roster, the schedule, all of that. We got a lot to cover in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget, you can also watch Locked On Pelicans on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, the same place you watch your Pelicans play at 10:30 a.m. every single weekday. For those watching on YouTube, I'm sorry. I uploaded the wrong video file to the channel with the show on Jeremiah Fears. So if you missed it or you started to watch the show and were like, wait, I've already seen this, you did. A little bit of operator error on my part there. My bad. I'm sorry, but I re-uploaded it, so it's there now. There's one key stat about Jeremiah Fears and his free throw rate. I think that's really worth looking at for how he's going to impact the team in a very positive way this year. Go give that show a watch if you haven't already, because I messed up yesterday. But today, we're going to focus on the other rookie, Derik Queen. Pelicans making a risky move, trading next year's future first unprotected to move up 10 spots and draft Derik Queen. Look, they're really high on him. A lot of people had him as a top 5 guy on their board. So to get him at 3 overall, honestly, 13 overall, if he's a top 5 guy on your big board, smart business, truthfully. But a lot of people have been blasting this move, not only for, the future draft capital that the Pelicans gave up to go get Derik Queen, even though I'm not as down on that as others, but also a lot of people are questioning the fit of Derik Queen alongside Zion Williamson. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not worried about that. Anyone who's saying that hasn't watched Zion Williamson enough or Derik Queen enough. And we're going to get into some of this. Let's just get into it right now here, right? Look, when you look at Derik Queen, it's tough to kind of exactly figure out what his role is going to be at the NBA level just yet. Is he a power forward? Is he a center? He's kind of a tweener in between that. And when you look at him, he plays like a guard. He's really good at attacking off the bounce. He's really good at cutting. He's great at facilitating with the ball in his hands, and his decision-making is really good. And one of the things that's most impressive with him is, when he gets going downhill, it's an impressive skill that he has. He's one of the more skilled front court players we've seen come into the NBA in a really, really long time, right? This is someone who can drive from the big man position that you don't really see a ton of. He's got very good strength, balance, and just coordination to be able to go get the shot up and score on the inside, whether it's spin moves, whether it's a back to the basket post move, whether it's just touch off the glass, whatever. Him being such a strong dude allows him to just have this level of stability that allows him to stay upright and get the shots off that he wants to do. And that's, I think, going to work out at the NBA level. At Maryland, this is someone who averaged almost 1 point per possession on drives, which for big men is really impressive and not a number that you see all that often. That's, guards are going to be a little bit better than that. But for big men to be able to do that on drives is truly kind of a game-changing skill set to have. So the real question about him is not, is he a talented player? It has nothing to do with what the Pelicans gave up, because if he becomes an all-star this year or in the future, it doesn't need to be this year, then all of a sudden you don't care about what they traded away to get him. But if he doesn't fit next to, Zion Williamson or even in the Pelicans' existing offense, whatever that might be, it becomes a little bit more of a head scratcher. And I think that's part of the reason why people don't love this is they're like, well, if you traded up to get this guy, you're going to play him a lot of minutes right away. And he doesn't fit next to Zion Williamson, right? Zion does his best work in the same spot that basically Derik Queen does his best work, and so if you put both of them out there where they kind of occupy the same spot, that mucks up spacing. It crowds the paint. It's going to make life difficult for both of them. But I don't worry about this, truthfully, right? Whether he's complimentary or not to Zion Williamson, I don't care. And I do think he can complement Zion. We'll touch on that in a minute here. They're going to fit. And the reason for that is Zion has fit with every big man that he's played with. If you look at all of the guys that he's played significant minutes with that are centers, they've all worked. Go back to Derek Favors. He had a positive net rating with Derek Favors. After that was Steven Adams. It was slightly negative. That's the one starting center that Zion Williamson has been negative with, and that was Steven Adams, who of all of the big men that we're going to talk about, he was the least skilled offensively when it comes to it. He's just an offensive rebounding guy in Steven Adams, right? That's what he does. He's not as skilled as Derek Favors. After Steven Adams, Jonas Valanciunas for a number of years, Zion Williamson had a positive net rating with him. Last year, you got Yves Missi. That was a negative net rating, but it's 1 year, and also last year was just weird, right? But when you look at Billy Hernan-Gomez, positive net rating. Carlo Makovic, positive net rating. When you look at all the big men that he's basically played with, they've had positive net ratings for the most part, almost entirely across the board until last year. That says Zion can work with basically any kind of big man. If you want one takeaway, the Too Long Didn't Listen part of this segment here, Zion works with anybody. So one as talented and skilled as Derik Queen, no problem. Look, yeah, there's going to be a lack of spacing, just like there's been a lack of spacing at times for this team. Hasn't mattered. Zion's put up numbers and they've won games for the most part, at least 2 years ago, right? When you look at Derik Queen, one of the things he's really great at is finishing around the rim. He can do it with his left or right hand. He's stronger with he's a righty, so his strong side is his right hand, but he can do it with his left, and he can do it in a variety of different ways. You see baby hook shots, spin moves, whatever it might be. He's shown that he can finish around messy paint. And if you watch Maryland last year, it wasn't like he had good spacing and was isolated one-on-one at the times either. It wasn't. The paint is crowded for both these guys having such good touch and playing like guards. I see that as less of a problem. If you're putting two Jonas Valanciunas out there, that's a disaster. But two big men that are as offensively skilled with touch and finesse as Derik Queen and Zion Williamson, I'm less worried about that. That means that he's a guy that should complement Zion. Queen can do some work off ball. He can facilitate on ball too, while Zion works off ball. So when you start to see this, a lot of people are pointing out that maybe Derik Queen is a Zion replacement. And look, you might be right. We'll talk about that coming up here next. But he also complements him, in my opinion, now. And if it doesn't work, it's more Derik Queen's a rookie, and it's just going to be rookie struggles than them not being able to fit next to one another. I'm really not worried when you watch it. Go watch Derik Queen's film. You're going to see a dude that if you pop into just mucked up spacing should be fine. I'm really excited to see him in Summer League. I'm really curious to see if they run the offense through him at times, if he plays power forward, if he plays center, how they're going to use him. Derik Queen, alongside Jeremiah Fears, and to a lesser extent Micah Peavy, who we'll talk about a little bit later, I think are guys that I'm just genuinely looking forward to watching in Summer League. We'll have more Summer League talk coming up here a little bit later in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. But I want to talk to, we're going to say the quiet part out loud. We're going to say the quiet part about Zion Williamson out loud coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. What is that? Well, I'll tell you because we're saying it out loud. That's coming up here next. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, so whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. Look, you're already following the action, so make it a little bit more thrilling. With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach, like I was this past weekend Probably why I uploaded the same show by accident. Again, I'm sorry. So with FanDuel, you can track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet every single day. It's easy to use. They have fast payouts, and it just makes regular season games feel like must-watch events. So whether it's a same-game parlay, betting on the player props, you've got it all over at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, perfect! New customers can bet just $5 and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's $150 in bonus bets after your first $5 bet wins. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans, almost 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well, and become an everyday or listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. We're covering everything you want to know about this team. For your second listen, it's Locked On Saints with host Ross Jackson. Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold. Tyler Shook, is he going to be the starting QB? I hope so. I like him. He's doing all the right things. I hope he's going to be the starter. Ross Jackson's going to tell you whenever that decision gets made over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's say the quiet. Let's just get right to it here. One of the things that I think is kind of a secret thing the Pelicans are doing, whether this is intentional or not, and maybe it's just Joe Dumars wanting to kind of retool the roster in his image. The Pelicans are starting to build for life after Zion Williamson. You know, for the longest time, if you've been an everydayer for a while, you basically heard me say, like, everything begins and ends with Zion Williamson on this team. If he's healthy, they're going to be good. If he's not healthy, they're going to struggle. Like, it's really as simple as that. And it's been tough to separate the Pelicans from Zion Williamson for a long time now. But all of a sudden now you start to see life after Zion, whether they get there or not, right? Maybe Zion has a massive year, stays healthy all year, and you're like, well, you're not getting rid of him now. But you can start to see life after Zion Williamson, where that once felt really inconceivable, or like a really, really long, desolate wasteland rebuild, should you get rid of him or cut him, right? Something along those lines. But now all of a sudden it doesn't feel as daunting, as scary, and you can see that even if Zion Williamson were to go down for extended time this year, which would hurt the team, like, don't get me wrong here, right? You can at least see a team that could try and be competitive. You know, this team has long tried to kind of find the balance between Zion and no Zion, because no Zion is what you get more often than not. So a couple of years ago, they tried to go with a Zion, like the not Zion-centric offense, and that didn't really work. But now you can see them doing it and it actually working. You have players, you know, in Jeremiah Fears and Jordan Poole and some of the other guys that we've talked about that can, you know, in Joe Dumars' words, compromise a defense. That's a good thing. They haven't really had those type of players that get defenses in rotations. You have shot makers in CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram, but not guys that get like defenses rotating in a way that Jeremiah Fears, seriously, go listen to the show that I had to re-upload, can do, because some of what he's so impressive in terms of getting downhill and attacking and getting defenses into rotations. Now, if Zion leaves, you know, with such a unique skill set that he has, whether it's injury or, you know, he's traded after a year, let's say, you have Derik Queen that can step right in and kind of be that Zion Williamson replacement, can be that offensive hub from the mid post that can pass really well, that makes good decisions, that does draw two to the ball because he's such a skilled scorer inside, that at least it lets you like plug and play, even if it's to a lesser extent, 80, 70% of Zion Williamson, whereas you didn't have anyone that could do that before. The reason they tried to go with that like not Zion-centric offense was his skill set is so unique and you didn't have anyone that could replace him, that if that's what you put in in practice, and now all of a sudden he's not there, well, what do you do? Well, now you just pop Derik Queen in, right? Like, so you have Derik Queen as Zion's eventual like heir apparent potentially, but also complement to him. And I think that's a good position the Pelicans have put themselves in, even if it means giving up next year's first round pick, that if you still are committed to trying to build around Zion for the foreseeable future, look, you got a guy that has such a unique skill set similar to Zion's that, okay, we might not miss as much of a beat as we would have before. we might not be an elite team if Zion Williamson goes down, but can we be competitive? And the answer to that could be, I'm not guaranteeing it, could be yes. And so the Pelicans are putting more levels of insurance or redundancy in there that they hadn't had before under the David Griffin era. So you can complain about Joe Dumars all you want in, what he's been doing, but all of a sudden now you look at him and you go, oh, I can kind of see what they're doing here. And at least they're prepping themselves to not just completely bottom out should a hamstring injury or something come up to Zion Williamson. I think that's a good thing. When you look at this roster now, one of the questions that I would ask is this team better than they were at the end of last season? I assume health, right? I'd argue, yeah, it's different. They need to improve certain areas. But with Jeremiah Fears giving you production at the guard position, even if DeJounte Murray was healthy, there are different kinds of players. So you get that from Jeremiah Fears, right? You have a competent backup to Zion Williamson in Derik Queen and someone that could play alongside of him while also helping with some of the rebounding, I think. Queen is a very good defensive rebounder, in my opinion. I kind of love all of this. So before where it's like, well, if Zion goes down, this team's going to be garbage. They might not be good, but I don't know if they're going to be garbage anymore. Or even if you get to the point where it's like, okay, if you trade Zion, you're going to go through a long rebuild. Well, you kind of jump-started the rebuild in a sense, should you trade Zion Williamson away. You do that now, yeah, okay, cool. It's the Jordan Poole show. It's the Derik Queen show. It's the Jeremiah Fears show. It's the Trey Murphy show. I like all of that. You haven't had kind of all of those options that you feel nearly as good about until this season. So the Pelicans front office, for the flack that they've been given, and it's a risky trade, don't get me wrong. Look, if Derik Queen pans out like we think he could, you're fine. You can trade Zion. You could even trade Zion for a bad return at that point and just be like, you know what? We want to clear the salary. We're going to do what we need to do here, and we're going to move forward around these young guys. That's a great spot to be in. I had struggled to see what life after Zion would look like. And it was kind of a scary prospect to me when it came to this team and how long it would take to try and jumpstart the rebuild. And look, if Fears and Queen don't work out, it's not going to be great, certainly. But if they do, because we're pretty high on them, and I think they're certainly capable of it, you start to feel good about, the multiple directions this team could go for. Before, I had long said, the everydayers have heard this, right? Like I would go down with the Zion chip. I'd lose my job trying to make it work around Zion Williamson. And to an extent, that's what happened to David Griffin. And the reason I would say, I'd go down with the Zion chip is I couldn't envision how you would build a competent team, constructive team without him, without going through an exceptionally long, 5-year rebuild. And so if that's not a realistic possibility or in the cards or something anyone just wants to do in general, yeah, you struggle to envision life after Zion. And all of a sudden, you can start to see it now. If Zion goes down and your starting lineup is, say, Jeremiah Fears, Jordan Poole, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Yves Missi, or Derik Queen in there somewhere, I'm not convinced that's an extremely good team, but they're fun. That'll at least be fun. But there are some things in there that work really well that you haven't had before. And that's an encouraging sign overall. So while a lot of people dislike the direction of the team or what they've done, look past the immediacy of the trade and look a little bit more forward, and you can start to see the vision coming together. Again, everything's still a little bit blurry. This year's a little bit blurry. The future's a little bit blurry, but it's starting to come more into focus almost by the day and as you start to analyze this roster. And I would not be shocked if you start to see, NBA pundits and people starting to kind of be high on this team going into next year and pegging them as the 6th seed or something along those lines, which is, look, that's probably their ceiling, but if you do that and develop 2 young guys too, you're going to be in a really good position with all of that. So coming up next, let's switch to Summer League for a little bit, and also the Pelicans' second-round pick getting paid. Good for him. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast and watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network as well, every weekday at 10:30 a.m. Same place you watch your Pelicans play. For your second listen, it's Locked On NBA. There's no off season in the NBA. Doug, Matt, and Hayes over at the Locked On NBA podcast are keeping you up to date with all contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. They're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's get into Summer League. Before we do that, though, and run down the roster, we've done a little bit of it in yesterday's show. Micah Peavy, the Pelicans' second-round pick out of Georgetown, signing a 4-year deal, getting $3.4 million guaranteed. His contract should start at about $1.2 million this year, go to about 2.2 next year or so. When you factor in all the change and all that, comes to about 3.4 million over his first 2 seasons. The third year is non-guaranteed. Then the fourth year is a team option at that point. So good for him for getting some guaranteed money. They really liked him. Obviously, he's from the DMV area in Georgetown, so the Troy Weaver connection with that. But Micah Peavy projects to be a 3-and-D guy. I don't think he's going to get a ton of minutes in the rotation right away, but this is someone they were very, very high on. They really liked him. They went out and got him, and look, good on him on getting paid here a little bit. I need to update my Pelicans salary cap sheet to see kind of where they stand in what the first apron and luxury tax room is. They should be just outside, I think, of the luxury tax and be in a good spot with all of that. But they have one open roster spot, so we'll see what they do with it. But good on Micah Peavy for getting paid. You know, I would imagine, let's run down the Summer League roster here. So the full Summer League roster is announced. We said Antonio Reeves is on there after being waived by New Orleans. He could maybe earn that final roster spot. No Carlo Makovich on this, which I find a little bit strange, and I'm trying to get an update on where he is. But let's run through it here. Trey Alexander, guard from Creighton, who was with the Denver Nuggets last season. He is on a 2-way deal here for the New Orleans Pelicans. Titan Anderson out of Northern Iowa is on the team. Will Baker of LSU on the team as well. Keon Brooks Jr. has been around the team for the past year or so, is going to be on Summer League as well. Hunter Dickinson, center, 7'2" from Kansas. He's signed as an undrafted guy to the Pelicans' 2-way spot. AJ Hoggard is there out of Vanderbilt. Jeremiah Fears, obviously. Chase Hunter from Clemson. Yves Missi is going to be playing in Summer League, though I don't think he's going to play a ton. I think he's proven he doesn't need to do that. Derik Queen is going to be there. Lester Quinones on one of the 2-ways as well for the Pelicans is there. You know, he needs a good showing in Summer League to probably kind of keep that spot, I would imagine. That's your third guy there. The 2-ways are Trey Alexander, Hunter Dickinson, and Lester Quinones right now. Antonio Reeves is there. Christian Shoemate out of McNeese, which is cool to see, getting the local guys here, also where Joe Dumars went. So he is on the team as well, and then Trey Townsend out of Arizona. The games are as follows. It starts Thursday, 2:30 p.m. Central against the Timberwolves. Saturday, 7:30 p.m. against the Lakers. Tuesday, 9 p.m. tip-off against the Trailblazers. Then Wednesday against the Thunder at 8:30 p.m. It's either going to be on ESPN, ESPN2, or NBA TV. And then they'll have a final 5th game, which is how it goes in Summer League. You play 5 games. It just depends on, you know, how you finish and where you're going to go. I would imagine your starting lineup is going to be something like Jeremiah Fears, probably Trey Alexander, Micah Peavy, Derik Queen, and Yves Missi would be my starting 5 in some way with all of that. I think that's kind of a pretty fun Summer League team. I'm going to be very interested in watching them, right? I want to see Jeremiah Fears get downhill, attack, draw fouls, get to the line, create open looks for others that way. If he can do that, I'm going to be happy. Derik Queen, I'm curious how they use him. Is it in a double big lineup? Does he play the 4? Does he play the 5? What's, you know, kind of the split between those two positions? Because he'll probably play both, truthfully. You know, do they run the offense through him a la Alperen Şengün with the Houston Rockets? I think that's very realistic. You know, at times when you want to go maybe a little bit lighter on guards or add some more size out there, Queen is certainly capable of doing that. That's going to be kind of fun. You know, they need some more size in Hunter Dickinson. Does he really claim a spot, not in the rotation during the regular season, but as a guy, oh yeah, we got to keep him on a 2-way and develop him and play him in the G League? Yves Missi, you know, does he just go out and dominate? What has he added this offseason? Is it a better handle? Is it a 3-point shot? Is it just a more refined offensive game? Are they throwing up lobs to him? You know, if it's him and Derik Queen, Is there a 4-5 pick and roll, a 4-5 lob action that you could see there with Derik Queen tossing it up to Misi and Misi going up and throwing it down? I certainly think you could see a lot of that there. I want to see that kind of stuff. Corey Brewer for the Pelicans is going to be their head coach in Summer League. I'm excited for him to get this opportunity too. He's been kind of working his way up the ranks and has a ton of respect from the players. Still a bucket getter in the big three as well. I'm excited to see him just as a coach and what he's doing and getting through to these guys and how he's managing them. That's going to be a lot of fun too. So Summer League's about that kind of stuff. Don't worry about the individual performances and things like that. And even if guys struggle, I'm not overly worried about it. You don't want anyone to look like they don't belong. But certainly if you dominate Summer League, like a lot of these dudes are just jobbers in a sense that are here in Summer League just to get paid a little bit. And then they go back to whatever their day jobs are, in LA or close by Vegas and just go out for a couple free meals in 2 weeks or so. It's not the toughest level of competition in the slightest. So if you dominate it, it doesn't mean you're going to dominate the NBA. If you struggle, look, these guys are on a whirlwind from getting drafted, going to New Orleans, getting like 5 practices, and that's about it. Then going to Vegas. It's a lot. So don't worry if they struggle, but I'm excited to see these guys play and what they're capable of bringing. And it's our first chance to see them. And look, Summer League's just fun. Enjoy it. Don't read too much into it. Let's just hope for good health, no serious injuries, anything like that. That's what we're hoping for here. And it'll let these guys just get some run in, work with their teammates. I hope we'll see Zion Williamson out there in Vegas. I don't know if we will or not. We'll see who else from the team shows up, but it would be good to see those guys there kind of making their veteran impact presence felt. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. I'm excited for Derik Queen and all the rest of the young guys. I hope you are as well. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be back with y'all tomorrow. See you next time.